Hello and welcome to Board Game Bonkers. I'm Jace here. This is the second season of Under the Maple Lights, and on today's show we have Pat Marino, who's the designer of Avatar. Welcome, Pat.
Thank you so much for having me.
Oh, it's great to have you on, and why don't you tell everyone a little bit about yourself?
Sure. So I am the director of hobby games at the Op here in the U.S., formerly known as USA Opoly. And in my role, I kind of oversee our strategic planning around our hobby games, our more complex strategy games that we're bringing to market. And I also have the fun job of designing some of those titles myself. So as you mentioned, Avatar Fire Nation Rising is one of my games. I'm working on some new stuff now that I can't talk about because it's IP based and there's always some restrictions on that. But I've also I did our Cuphead fast rolling dice game based on the video game. I've done some stuff with Disney, Star Wars, Marvel, a lot of IP stuff that's been super fun to work on. And right now we're working on some non-IP stuff as well, which is really exciting for us.
Fantastic stuff. And for those who are perhaps clicking this on the first time, let me just explain what this is all about. We'll be presenting 10 questions to our guests, but they will be drawn from this poll. So if you've been watching season one, you'll know all about this, the 10 random questions from originally 120. But there is a new twist we've added on here, and I guess there's no idea what that is. Well, the last question isn't coming from the poll. In fact, we'll be taking one from this pile here, which is simply a scenario, and they've got to give us an answer based on that scenario. I have no idea what the scenario is, so it'll be interesting to see what answer we get. We have been kind of too tough. Well, some make it a little bit tough, but we'll see. It comes out. So, will our guests thrive on the Maple Lights, or will they be a little bit nervous? We're about to find out as we present 10 questions to a guest. So, Pat, are we ready?
Yeah, let's do it.
Pat, well, let's draw out question number one. Well, this is a long one. Here we go. Okay, so which board game would you remove from existence?
Wow. That is a hard question. I don't like to be mean against any games. It's always a tough thing. This is going to be a weird answer, but it's actually one of my all-time favorite games, which is Glory to Rome. And the reason I would remove it is it's never going to get reprinted. And that's such a tough thing that there's this great sort of unattainable game out there, right? And I think it's sort of a pain point on the industry that it keeps coming up of maybe someone will find a way to bring it back to market, but it's never going to happen. So in a way, it would almost be cleaner if it had just never existed. And then maybe somebody could invent it fresh in a way that it could be published.
Yeah, certainly taking a positive twist in that. And I'm sure they brought out actually a newer version, but a different kind of theme on it, but it's based on that Glory to Rome system. And I can't recall from the top of my head. So I was actually instantly looking at it last week and I've now forgotten. But I'm sure that's a great game a lot of people love and would love to see it reprinted again. And it'd be a shame not seeing that come back again, perhaps with a few tweaks because it can be a little bit chaotic.
Yeah, I think the new one might be the Aegean Sea. I think Asmodee Games is putting out that should be coming out soon, and they did one called Matainai that was kind of similar. But for me, they never lived up to the original. But I'm always like hesitant to play my original copy because I don't want it to get all bent up and ruined. So yeah,
That's great. And I'm sure there'll be some games in other people's spots. And it'd be interesting to find it actually. So if you've got any particular games you would like to see removed from existence, let us know in the comments down below because I'd be interested to see what other games come up. So let's move on to question number two, Pat.
all right.
We started off with a tough one there. We thought we get some nice ones. There are a lot of fluffy ones in our second season. So let's see. So what would you be doing instead if you weren't creating or designing board games?
Oh, so I would probably still be in my old career, which was I worked in higher education administration, and my specialty was student housing and student transition to college. So I was just wrapping up my doctorate when I left that field to come make board games. So I would probably be doing something in that realm and teaching college courses with that doctorate. That was the goal before the opportunity to jump ship and have a lot more fun came along. So I think I'd still be there.
Fantastic. And I suppose board gaming has a similar sense as if you introduce some board game, you're teaching that board game to someone and you're educating them on something that might be new to them and new in their life. And it also has an educational basis as well, board gaming, because it's very good for the brain and very good for social interaction, isn't it?
Yeah, a lot of my academic work had a lot of psychological and adult development coursework in it because my PhD is in leadership studies, so that includes a lot of understanding how humans interact in different scenarios and how leadership sort of in the study of leadership, it's not sort of managerial instructional leadership that a lot of people think of. It's more studying the interaction that happens between people or groups of people that drives certain people to follow the lead of others within the group. And it's not always because they have title or authority. Sometimes we have people in our lives or in our groups where we're like, I'll follow that person in their directive because I trust them, I respect them, they have good ideas, whatever it may be. And sort of what is that intangible interaction piece? And a lot of that does definitely come into board games because we're looking at, as we watch our playtesters, well, what's happening in this dynamic between a group of humans around a table, whether it's cooperative, competitive, like what sort of emotional experiences are they having? Who's, especially in a co-op game, who's doing all the talking? Who's just doing what they're sort of instructed to do? Are they collaborating or is one person quarterbacking? Like a lot of that study of that human behavior, having some of those tools in my kit has been really helpful in game design. So definitely a lot of connection there.
Yeah, I think I'd be in people's naughty list when I play a co-op game. So I think, yeah, perhaps zip it and let others make that decision, which I've gotten better of it over the years. I think because my brain works a lot different, I can think eight or nine steps ahead and work out all the kind of outcomes and the conclusion. So, yeah, I suppose I need to get better at that and perhaps watch some more leadership videos on YouTube, but we will see.
Yeah.
So let's move on to question number 3.
Okay.
So no fluffy questions yet, a couple of the tough ones. So what's one productivity tool that you couldn't live without and it makes it indispensable?
Ooh. I don't think I could function without Slack, the text communication tool. Sometime during early COVID, our company went to work from home, as many did, and while many folks have started to return to the office in a couple days a week type of a thing in current time, during COVID, many of us moved away from Southern California, where our headquarters is, myself included. And I think if I didn't have the immediate ability to message different members of my team and ask questions and follow up on things and share information, we share files over Slack, a lot of that kind of thing. I just don't know how we would work remotely. And in fact, most of the people I work closest with are spread throughout the country. And so without an easy communication tool that doesn't require, well, we all have to be available at the same time and jump into a Google Meet or whatever it is. I don't know how any business would get done. So if Slack disappeared tomorrow, I suppose Discord would still be there, but there's just certain things that Slack does a little bit cleaner for us as a team than Discord. So if that went away, I'd be in big trouble.
And I know Teams was a huge platform as well, and tool that a lot of people use in businesses, and I know we use that a lot as well. So, yeah, Slack is a very good one as well. So, thankfully, those tools were available for us during COVID.
Yeah, it's funny. Like when it all started, we were, video meetings are so hard to set up, and we didn't have the cameras in our office and things we needed, and we use Slack, but more to like just casual fun chat at work. We didn't really have a company Discord. We didn't do Tabletopia and digital prototypes. And then when we were forced into it, we realized it was not the big barrier we thought it was. We thought this stuff was going to be so complicated to set up. And now we look back on it like we should have been doing that for years, and being able to, for example, we'll make a digital prototype of a game we're testing. Now we have a company Discord where we have playtesters. We can share that prototype with hundreds of playtesters, get them to go all play it at their homes all over the country, give us feedback. We can compile that feedback. And in the old days, we used to like more or less bribe people to come into our physical office where we have one of those sort of old fashioned analysis rooms with a one-way mirror and cameras. And we'd say, okay, here's the game. You're going to play it. We'd sit behind the glass and take notes and do the whole thing. And it's like, it was so inefficient compared to what we can do now that we were sort of forced over that hurdle. We have to learn how these things work. And now I can't imagine, like, I mean, we're on Google Meet several times a day for different meetings. We're using it to connect with some of our partners, where we used to say, okay, we'll fly to your office, we'll have this meeting. And now it's like we do that stuff, once a week because it's so much easier.
Yeah, so it's been, COVID is obviously been extremely tough for a lot of people, but it's also allowed us to be more flexible. And that's one positive that's come out of it. It's a shame we've needed to have COVID to introduce all those flexible tools, but we're here now, and we may as well make some good use out of it and continue with it.
Yeah, exactly.
So let's move on to our next question. On to number 4. So we have a bit of a small one here. So how do you stay motivated during difficult tasks?
Cool. A lot of what motivates me in terms of making games is remembering why we make the games. There's a lot of steps, especially with IP-based games. There's a lot of challenges to getting everything approved, designed right, produced, manufactured, shipped. I mean, there's a lot of logistics that we all manage, and when those things pile up, for me, it's important to remember why we do this, right? If we're making an IP game, we're making it for fans of that IP to have a new way to explore, whether it's Disney or Marvel or Harry Potter or something, a new way to enter that universe and experience it, get together with their friends and family around a table and have a good time, and maybe escape some of their own challenges and things for a little while and have a gaming night. So keeping that kind of a thing in mind, and even beyond my work, it's like facing a difficult challenge or something or a task. It's like, okay, but remember what the purpose is, right? And even sometimes looking at it and going, this thing I'm so frustrated about, this project, whatever it is, whether it's working on my house or doing something, it's like, is it really that important? You know what I mean? Because it's easy to get caught up in the, man, this is really hard, this is the thing. It's like, having that perspective. Sometimes, well, am I doing this? What does it matter in the grand scheme of other aspects of my life? And also remembering, like, I make board games for a living. Things can't be that bad, right? So I have that benefit that I can kind of step back a little bit and say, big picture, I'm making games for people to go out and have fun. I'm getting paid to do it. I'm earning a living at it, at least, and things are always not as bad as they could be, at least for me. And so that's a big help in keeping motivated to keep working on it, because ultimately I know that game might make someone's day. It might create a fun time and an escape for them that they really need in their lives. So I just try to keep that front of mind.
Yeah, certainly you do need a purpose, don't you, in life, or even each day, and even something to aspire to. Otherwise, why would you get out of the bed? Why would you get out? Why would you do something? I don't aspire to something.
It's always the interesting question, if you won like with the Powerball or Mega Millions lotteries, these huge lottery draws, it's like, if suddenly you had all the money in the world, it's like, what would you do? What would the driver be? It's like, oh, I can always do that tomorrow. I'll just take today off and stay in bed. And it's like, I always wonder how people kind of keep themselves going in that scenario where there's not well, I've got to pay the mortgage and pay my car payment and do these things, but also, have some kind of driver to provide for your family and those kinds of things. If suddenly you have all that, like, I could see where it'd get very tempting to get very lazy very quickly. So that's always got to be tough.
Yes, absolutely. And only those millionaires can answer that. let's, let's move on to question number 5. So we're halfway there. So if you're at a trivia night, okay, what category would you know most about?
Ooh, if there was anything on the Dune universe, I've got our team covered. I'm a really big Dune fan, and I've been reading through all of the books chronologically, because they've been released sort of out of story order. The original author and then his son releasing books and filling in different parts of the timeline, and so it's been really kind of fascinating to read them in the order of the story rather than the order they were written, and in particular, seeing some of the subtle things that Frank Herbert's son, Brian, picked up from just little nods here and there that were in the original Dune book, where it was like, oh, somebody's backstory was briefly referenced that this thing happened. And when you realize, like, a book he wrote many years later, which actually is earlier in the timeline, told that story. And to think about, like, sort of the father made this note of like, oh yeah, here's a brief nod of like this character experienced this thing. And then decades later, his son actually wrote that story to fill in the gap and give us more context and detail. But when you read it in order, it all makes sense. It's like, oh, of course, yeah, we're just remembering back to that thing that happened before, but it's like in the order they were written, they didn't know that yet. And so to see that interplay, but yeah, I definitely am a big fan of that universe. Similar with Lord of the Rings, though I'm no Stephen Colbert when it comes to the deep lore knowledge of Lord of the Rings. I've consumed a lot of the content in the Silmarillion and those kinds of things, but Dune, I would have us covered on for sure in trivia.
Well, you don't want me and your team because I'm absolutely hopeless with trivia. And I remember myself in game played Linky, and I got almost every single answer wrong. Was close, but close isn't good enough. So
Yeah, yeah. Part of our partnership with Hasbro is we do some of the licensed Trivial Pursuit games, and it's always we have to find a sort of a content expert who can help us write the questions, or there are some folks who are experts in writing Trivial Pursuit questions, and then we'll have them do deep research on a particular IP to be able to write the questions. And the proofreading of those is always really challenging because if it's something you can kind of go through and say, yes, the average fan would know this, which like I was able to do with Rick and Morty. I know that IP pretty well and proofing those questions. But we get somewhere, it's like you proofread the questions. It's like, does anybody know the answer to this one? It seems like it's just such a niche, like deep lore thing. Our D&D set we did, which is 1,800 questions on Dungeons and Dragons. Some of the stuff in there, it's like, boy, you've got to be a multi-decade hardcore fan to know these. But then we share it with people and like, oh, everybody knows that. Like, I don't know how people keep it all straight.
that's right. You either know it or you don't.
Yeah.
So let's move on to question number 6. See what comes out this time. Do you prefer playing board games with small groups or larger groups of people?
Generally, the games I like to play are smaller group games. So I like a little bit of the heavier Euro games when I can get to the table, which is always a challenge I think we all face is finding a group of people who knows the rules and all those kinds of things. But given sort of any choice of scenario, I'd much rather have 4 people over and really dive into an Arc Nova or something like that and play for quite a while than to try to coordinate a larger group of people on a big party game. And I think part of that is it's harder to teach a large group rules. I was at Origins last week and we had a late night game of Decrypto, and there's probably 12 or 15 people playing, and trying to get everybody understanding all of the rules and moving in the same direction to play a party game was a little bit challenging, and sort of the communication, different learning styles. So that can always be a little tough. And I think a big group limits your choices, right? With 4 people, almost anything on the shelf behind me is valid. We can pull it off the shelf and play. With 7 people, suddenly it gets harder. With 12 people, it's almost impossible. There's only a handful of games we could play. So for me, a smaller group is always better, a little bit more intimate, a little bit better communication in the gameplay, and less of those hurdles. So that would be my preference. But if there's an option for 2-3 tables all lined up, so a larger group of friends can get together and play multiple games, I'm down for that too, just because it's always nice to see people and connect.
Yeah, absolutely. And everyone's got their own preference to that. And I much prefer smaller groups. And you're right, you can get a bit more intimate. It's more sociable, I think, because you can get more out of a game. I think if it's smaller groups of people, and it's a lot tougher, more people that are, because you're juggling between, maybe different multiple games that people are playing. And if one finishes before the other, they're twiddling their thumbs waiting, and then so you've got that to consider as well in larger groups. So let's move on to our next question, number 7. All right. Well, it's fighting away there. It's a big one, this. So if you could have either 100 board games of your choice or visit one top destination holiday of your choice, which one would you pick?
I would have to go with the holiday. And I say that partially because working in the game industry and being around games for several decades, being a collector and a gamer, I have a lot of the games I would want in my collection. There's a handful of out-of-print games that I haven't been able to track down, but I'm usually very fortunate in being able to either trade with other publishers or designers I know, or to simply just purchase games that I want to play. But holidays are a lot harder to plan and coordinate, and travel's really expensive these days. So if I had a choice to just even take a little bit of time off and just get a break, I would definitely choose that one.
Where would you go?
Normally I would say probably around Europe, but I have that trip planned later this year. I'm getting married in September, and after Essen, my fiance and I, we get married, and we're going to go to Essen, and do the big German convention. I'm working, she's just going for fun, and then we're going to go from there to Rome in Italy and jump on a cruise and go around the Mediterranean, do Turkey, Greece, Italy, and that's always been like a huge dream trip that I've wanted to do. I've done a bit of Italy before, but never like a whole multi-country cruise type of thing. And so I think given that that one's on the docket, sort of our next dream trip that we would love to do is either Thailand, or I would love to go to New Zealand and see like the Shire and all the Lord of the Rings stuff out there. But those are huge long flights from the US. So that's always been a maybe someday, but do you want to spend 20 hours on a plane? I don't know.
Well, I've done it. So it's not the funnest experience, I can tell you. And I've been fortunate enough to go to New Zealand. So it's a lovely country indeed. So yeah, you get a chance, pop out and see it. So let's move on to the next question. Number 7. Do you sleeve your cards?
Never. I'm going to say never. So I mentioned earlier, Glory to Rome is one of my favorite games. That game is sleeved because it's out of print, and if anybody spilled on it, I think I would be very sad. But other than that, no. And it's really for two reasons. The first is my games just don't get played enough. Any one copy, I own several hundred, and I'm always trading things out, buying new games. And so most of my games get 1 or 2 plays, and then they're off somewhere else. So the time investment, the money investment to sleeve cards is a lot of work. And the other one is, with the exception of like rare out of print games, I'm pretty laid back about damage to my games. I'd rather just enjoy them, experience them, and not be too tied up in what if something happens, what if somebody spills. It's like it happens, and if need be, I toss it or I get another copy, and it's a bummer if it does happen. But I think in 15, 16 years plus of gaming, it's longer than that, it's probably 20 years of gaming, I don't think I've ever had a disaster befall any of my games. So, I'd rather put the money into a new game than packs and packs of sleeves and the time to put all the cards in. So no, I'm not a big sleever, but I also don't play TCGs. I haven't played Magic since I was a kid. So I definitely get in that community the importance of it, and trying to protect all the cards, because you're carrying them around to different events and shuffling a lot and those kinds of things. But me personally, no.
I suppose it's a bit different as well if you've got children, because, their hands are not the cleanest. So obviously you'd want to kind of do some protection with your games, and maybe sleeve some of them, particularly the ones that are getting played a lot. And like you say, if you're getting a lot of gameplay, it probably is a good idea to sleeve the cards. But an argument that a lot of people like the feel of cards, and they don't like the feel of the sleeve, and that's quite understandable.
Yeah, I find them hard to shuffle too. Some of the lighter card games that do get heavy play, like a Six Nymph or something like that, that gets a lot of play. Those cards do tend to get kind of a little dirty over time, a little worn out. But I find the trade-off for me is, well, the time and energy to sleeve versus replacing a game that's relatively inexpensive to begin with. It's sort of like the sleeves cost almost as much as the game by the time you get enough. And then they're so thick when you stack them all up that they tend to slide around a little bit, or they don't fit in the box. So yeah, I'm with you on that. It's like, personally, I like the feel of the original cards more than the sleeves. But to your point, I don't have kids in my household, so I don't have to worry so much about younger hands or a little bit of bending of the cards and things like that might be more concerning.
Fantastic. So let's move on to our next question. So we're in question 9, I believe. Yeah. So we're getting all nicely. So which board game company do you admire, and why?
Ooh, there's quite a few. So I mentioned earlier, my role as director of hobby games is a lot of strategic business thinking. So I started as a game designer, but really now working at the op is a lot of looking at how we're changing our strategy and our position in the hobby game market, because with our long-standing history of making monopolies and things with Hasbro and doing licensed Munchkin games, I think a lot of the sort of diehard hobby gamers don't look at us as their go-to hobby game publisher. And we're really working to shift that over the next year to 2 years to really change how people perceive the types of games that we make, because we have some really fantastic hobby games in our line and we're expanding that. So I study a lot of hobby publishers to see like who does what well. And I admire them for different reasons, some of them for product mix, some of them for strategies. I think like a lot of people, I do really pay a lot of attention to and admire the work of Stonemaier Games, because Jamie Stegmaier is just a dynamo in terms of community building. And that is just so important to have that authentic connection between people who work at a gaming company who are authentically hobby gamers and people who are the target customer, and, sort of understanding that we're all in this hobby together, trying to make things that we'll all enjoy and have a good time with. And I think he really did community first, product and profit second, which I think is really such an important thing to work towards and something that we talk a lot about on our end. So I would definitely put them up there as one of the best.
Yes, and when you actually look into marketing, actually, there's one important concept. They'll say that you need to build some kind of community. You can't go into social media and start bombarding people with ads and all of this. Because that only lasts so long. You need some kind of community for longevity.
Yeah, and it's, there's always these posts, right, in different forms of like, who's your favorite company, right? And I always watch those to see, and it's companies that have a consistency to what they make, right? Because certain gamers like certain types of games. Chip Theory Games is another one that has a very strong, loyal following, because every Chip Theory game is this big, massive thing with neoprene mats and heavy poker chips and, very detailed gameplay. And their audience comes back to that time and again. Or Cephalofair with Gloomhaven, they make a particular type of game for a particular audience. Even Eagle Griffin in their consistency in publishing, like Vital Lacerda's big, tool as the artist, they present sort of a uniform product that appeals to an audience that they've captured very well. And so for us, we look to do something similar, but more with the gateway audience. I call them hobby ambassadors as our key customers, the folks who, like us, buy all the games. And then inevitably we all have this experience where we're hosting a game night for our friends who want to play games but don't buy all the games. And so you're sort of the game sommelier. What are you going to bring and teach? And it's very important to find the right game so everybody has a good time. It's easy to teach. It's got art and components that draw people in. So that's really where we're trying to go with our niche is being a publisher who consistently does the games that the ambassadors among us can bring to our friends and know that they're going to have a good time. They're going to be able to understand, jump right in and want to go buy their own copy, right? It's like, I can go teach those folks Lacerda, and it's going to take a while, and they might get through it, but are they going to be confident enough that they're going to go spend $120 to get their own copy? Probably not. But if I taught them, say, Cascadia, they're going to run out and say, oh, I understood Cascadia. I could play that at home. I'll go get my own set and do that. So that's kind of that messaging, consistency, and community around a particular type of product is what we're leaning towards. So definitely understand that angle.
Fantastic. So let's move on to our final question, number 10. So get down the bottom here. Let's try and get some on out. Here we go. So it's a short one. So what's your ideal working style?
Ooh, I joke about it a bit because I work from home now remotely. I'm in Atlanta, Georgia. Our company is in Southern California, and I have this great. I'm in my game room. I'm surrounded by all my games, my gaming table. I've got quiet. Usually my dog's sleeping and snoring under my desk while I'm working, and it's just I can focus and there's no interruption really in this kind of setup. Our office is very much the opposite. It's a very open, sort of warehousey type of environment, tons of desks, everybody hanging out. It's super social. It's super fun, but it is, for me, very hard to be productive in that environment because of the desire to just, a conversation's happening over to the side and it's something I'm interested in. And I stop what I'm working on. I've got to be part of that conversation and engage. And I just want to discuss with other game enthusiasts and people who work in the company and those kinds of things. and that can be super fun, and I really enjoy that. But if I have to, write a rules document for a game or edit or proof some files, I need that like zeroed in, no distraction focus. So for me, in terms of being really productive, this kind of isolated environment is a lot better.
Well, yeah, it's good to have a quiet environment because you tend to get more done, don't you, rather than a noisy environment. There's a lot of research that shows that. So we should have actually given you a scenario instead of that question, but we'll still give you a scenario for that. So we're going to take one from this pile, and we've got a lot of them, okay?
Okay.
So these are all different scenarios, so let's just randomly pick one. Here we go. And we're going to try and get an answer from you, okay? They're all different, they're all unique. So would you rather have 1 million or be the designer of one board game hit? Now, I've got a second part to this. I'll let you answer that first.
So $1 million or a board game hit? So I feel like this question could be different for freelance designers, where you're getting a royalty, but even absent a royalty, which is we get salary and benefits, full-time game designers, we don't get the royalty. I think I would still love to have a hit. I'd love to be able to go to conventions and see lots and lots of people enjoying that game, go into Target, see it on shelf. I think that would be worth more to me personally, experientially, than the money would be.
It's a good answer. I'm glad you picked that. And I'd be in the same boat as you. So the second part to this, a little bit different. So would you rather save all the animals or all the board games in the world?
Oh, animals. Board games can be replaced, as I think about, and I've seen it happen. Unfortunately, there's always folks in the community who have a flood, a fire, and they lose their collection. And certainly that's not all the board games in the world, but I think if all the board games were gone tomorrow, there's enough of us creative folks who love to play that we would find ways to make new ones. There's always something new coming. But I think about, my pets and wildlife and all that kind of thing. I don't think we could let go of that. It would be irreplaceable. So I would choose the animals for sure.
Absolutely. Well, I'm glad dinosaurs are not around, but I don't think I'm going to be losing many more animals in the world. So that brings us to the end of this show. So we hope you've enjoyed this. And this is our first episode of season 2. And if you haven't already done so, please like that. I was going to say like that button, but please give the video a like and consider subscribing to the channel as well. We'd love to hear your thoughts. Let us know in the comments and below what your particular highlights were of today's show. So that brings us to the end. I'd like to thank our guest, Pat, for joining us. It's been super fun, and we hope you've enjoyed it as well. So until next time, take care.